Salutations, Homo sapiens! One of the greatest predicaments that we face as incoming college freshmen is which of our precious trinkets to take along for the ride. As I had went over in a previous video, one of my decisions was to bring along a bobbit. I went over my reasons in that particular video. What about this fancy, colorful object that I'm currently messing with? Well, my fellow Homo sapiens, this is Rubik's Cube. Well, actually, this one was made by a company called Moyu, but it is still Rubik's invention. Similar to the bobbit, it's another brain teaser. If you can't tell, I'm a big fan of those. But this one, honestly, in comparison to bobbit, this one is easier. As a matter of fact, I'd even go as far as saying the Rubik's Cube wasn't even hard to begin with. Okay, you really have to stop taking me out of context. So who is Rubik, and what is his cube? Mr. Erno Rubik is an inventor from the nation of Hungary, born in 1944. Actually, his 80th birthday wasn't too far off from now, so happy belated birthday to this good sir. He was an architecture professor in Budapest for around 8 years, and during this time he created a prototype for a 3x3 square puzzle that was first known as the Magic Cube. He showed it to his students, and upon their positive reactions, he decided that it had potential in the public eye. He patented it the next year, released Hungary exclusive test units in 1977, and it finally saw a worldwide release in 1980, now known as Rubik's Cube. I could get into all of the different variations again like I did in the bobbit video, and make this 20-something minutes long again, but I just want to focus on the classic 3x3 for this one. I don't want all of my videos to be that extensive after all. The question that we're going to explore today is why I personally don't believe that this puzzle is as much of a challenge as it's made out to be in the public eye. Well, let's look at it like this.
Because you're a nerd!
Okay, now that was just uncalled for. This is not merely an issue of intelligence, and even if it were, I'll have you know that I consider myself a gentleman, not a nerd.
Who asked?
You just did. Now, please pay attention to what I'm about to do. And you just stopped watching. Wonderful. Before we get into my own opinion, let's explore what makes this puzzle so tough for most people. 6 centers, 8 corners, and 12 edges are what this 26-piece construction is made of, and the total possible number of permutations that can appear on the cube exceeds the millions, billions, trillions, and even quadrillions. The exact number is on screen right now, but to put that in English, 43 quintillion is more than the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy, even more than 100 million Milky Way galaxies. And it's also probably a lot more than the number 13, or 13 quintillion for that matter. With numbers as gargantuan as this, being able to emulate it in words is pretty much impossible, but the point is that there are a lot of permutations, and the solved cube makes up about 23,120,316 10 sextillionths of a percent. Simply put, it's not common. You can turn this thing all you want and not end up with a solution for years, I'd bet. No, turning the same 2 sides repeatedly doesn't work. That only happens when you're starting from the solved position and simply looping back to it. The fact that so many Homo sapiens fell for that is a little concerning, but I guess that's what desperation does sometimes. All of this is just to say that if you're simply making random, unprompted turns, you're going to get absolutely nowhere. It was recently discovered that the lowest number of moves that will be able to bring a scrambled cube from any position into the solved state is as low as 20. So no matter what permutation the cube is in, it can be remedied in 20 moves or less, which I think is actually really cool. I've never seen a 20-move solve actually happen in a competition, but the math proves that it's possible. Now, what would the average person think upon glancing at the scrambled cube? Most likely, the default approach is to solve each color one by one until all 6 are done. It's why you often hear inexperienced solvers go, "Hey, I solved the side." Sorry to burst your bubble, but no, solving a side isn't going to do any good. Looking at the puzzle as 6 independent colors is fundamentally flawed because, other than the centers, all of the pieces have more than one color to account for. So if, for instance, the white-blue edge is on the white side but aligned with red instead of blue, the red side can't be solved unless the white side is rearranged. The same problem applies to the other 7 surrounding pieces, meaning that a side-by-side approach usually sends a person in circles, endlessly rearranging the first side until eventually giving up and calling the thing impossible. The common issue of a solve boils down to how in order to advance to the next step, you often have to undo some of the progress that was already made. Let's say you know enough about the proper method to get the first layer of the cube taken care of. Great, now time for the second layer, right? Well, to put one of those edges in the right place, you can't just turn aside and get it in. Turning the top side obviously isn't going to do anything either, so you have no choice but to perform some set of moves which temporarily disturbs that first layer. Oh no! The solver thinks. I can't go to the next step without messing it up. And once more, they toss the cube aside and label it as impossible. That seems to be the running theme here. Find a method that kind of works, get stuck along the way, and back off. And maybe this is why the cube has earned a reputation of being a stressful mission to complete. After all, the sir behind this thing himself took around a month to crack his own code. If that isn't a testament to its difficulty, then what is?
I mean, that would also happen to be an appeal to authority, so using that as the foundation of your argument would serve as a logical fallacy. No offense, Sir Rubik.
Now please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that a puzzle with an official world record of 3.13 seconds would qualify as an impossible task to defeat by any means. Times have changed a lot since 1980. The cube has been studied countless times, and today, more people know how to tackle this thing than ever before. The stigma surrounding this cube and its insane challenge has worn off, yet it still does remain. In my humble opinion, given the right resources, anyone with the same 5 brain cells that a Bobbit requires should now be able to take care of Rubik's Cube. But the new question is, of course, how?
From the way I've described it, it may sound like there's only one viable solution to this conundrum, but that actually isn't the case at all. While yes, a lot of them follow the same general principle, each one is slightly different in execution. For the sake of this video though, since this is a video about why I think this cube doesn't have to be so difficult, I'll be describing what is known to the community as the beginner's method, which is a layer by layer approach. But first, I'm gonna have to scramble the cube again since I already solved it. See? It's that easy.
As I briefly mentioned earlier, the proper way to look at this cube is not as a side-by-side puzzle, but instead a layer-by-layer one. If I turn the cube like this, the distinction becomes clear. The white side is in fact part of an entire layer of pieces which need to be in the correct location. The yellow side is the same, and the middle with its centers and edge pieces functions as its own layer. That's the first idea that needs to be remembered. The second is what we tend to refer to as an algorithm. If you know the definition of this word already, it means the exact same thing here. It's a set of moves that's used to bring pieces from one place to another predetermined location on the cube where it's supposed to go. I'll spare the details of notation for this video since this is not a tutorial for solving the cube. If that's what you're looking for, then perhaps this one by Jaypee will satisfy your needs. Link in the description, of course, or you can scan the QR code. Anyway, the long and short of this is that by following a certain set of moves, you can basically put any piece on the cube wherever you want it to go, while also preserving the rest of the pieces by returning them to the same spots.
Does that make sense? Not really? Well, I'm not going to get into the actual algorithms themselves in this video, so consider yourself lucky. Again, you can consult a tutorial if that's what you're actually here for.
So, the first step is to create the first layer. Not first side, first layer. Most cubers will start on the white side, so that's where I'll demonstrate too. The easiest step in the entire process is to make a cross with the edges, making sure to align them with not just the white side, but also each one's respective side. Each edge is really easy to put in, since there's nothing to preserve at the moment. A few turns here and there and it's over with. Next is the corners, which once again, need to align with all 3 colors present on each. You put it above its intended location, follow a quick little cycle, and that's it. One layer down. The second layer only has 4 edges to put in, so once you line one up with its colors, you'd use an algorithm which connects it to the already placed corner, then puts both pieces back at once. Do that 3 more times and the second layer is over with. The last layer is where things get interesting. Because there are so many pieces to preserve on this one, the algorithms start getting a lot more advanced. I can get the layer taken care of using only 4 of these algorithms, but there are upwards of 78 different ones that can be used to make the last layer far quicker to solve, depending on the exact location of each piece. That's called the CFOP method, which stands for cross, first two layers, orient last layer, and permute last layer. And this is typically the method that everyone uses in competition. I've been meaning to learn CFOP one of these days, but for now I use a slight variation on the beginner's method algorithms. The yellow cross algorithm is easy to remember, then I repeat the second algorithm a few times until every yellow piece is facing up. Lastly, I use one algorithm to align the corners to their correct places, and another to switch the edges around. And that's all there is to it, really. Now, the true beginner's method starts with the cross like I do, but instead of orienting the corners, the next step is to put the edge pieces in the right places. Then the corners are permuted and are finally oriented to face the correct directions. I've been showing each algorithm on screen for the sake of it, but I fully understand that these strings of letters are practically meaningless to you if you have no experience. Perhaps I'm overly simplifying the process here, but really, the only tough part about the cube is remembering the algorithms. Once they're engraved in your head, as they are in mine, the moves sort of naturally flow through your hands, as if you're typing on the keyboard. There's no need to be intimidated by this puzzle, or say to yourself, I can't solve that. Yes, you certainly can. Rubik's Cube doesn't have an entrance barrier, and learning to solve it is just as approachable as learning any other miscellaneous skill.
Such as learning how to raise your eyebrow, for example. Or learning to accept the consequences of your own actions. Isn't that right, Sir Jackson? You know what you did. What he said.
I've never been the best at giving clear instructions to others. If I was able to learn it, then I don't see what's stopping you either. Let there be more cubers in this world, I say. The world record for the classic 3x3 cube in official competition is, again, 3.13 seconds, which is insane to think about on the surface. Can people really just recite algorithms from muscle memory while also moving their hands at light speed? Well, yes, kind of. Being able to memorize all of the different sequences and cases can take upwards of years to master, but once everything is combined properly, you may be able to impress yourself with how quickly the result can be. 43 quintillion permutations may downright sound like a threat, but don't be fooled. Remember, only 20 moves are technically needed to defeat any given scramble. I'd like to believe that every single one of those permutations has been put onto a cube at least once since 1980, considering how much of a worldwide phenomenon Sir Rubik's brainchild went on to be. But the average person won't get to see even an eighth of those combinations in regular play. There's no shame in using the beginner's method either. Again, my solution is a variation of it, and I'm easily able to finish it in under 1 minute. Granted, I don't think I'll ever get to a 3-second solve, or even a 15-second solve, but you know what? That's okay. You can't have it all, can you? Cubing isn't just about your speed, it's about learning something new, developing strong problem-solving skills, and yes, making friends. While I'm not part of it myself, the speed cubing community is a friendly and exciting environment where Homo sapiens from all across the globe can share their experiences and find the best possible solutions to this legendary puzzle. Rating the challenge on my scale, with 13 being the easiest and 0 being impossible, I'll give it an 8 out of 13. Mathematically, Rubik's Cube is an insane challenge, but practically, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to make it more difficult for yourself. Take it slow, one step at a time, and everything will slowly but surely fall into place. Those were a couple of my example solves at full speed, and you can see that I'm nowhere near perfect, but I always make it to the end without much struggle. All that matters at the end of the day, whether you're an experienced speed cuber, a humble young gentleman like me, or simply a Homo sapien who is excited to solve one of these for the first time ever, is that you enjoy yourselves.